Hi everyone, it's me. We're just gonna do a quick January reading update today. I ended up actually reading 13 books in the month of January, which is such a good start to the year. And I'm already ahead in my Goodreads reading challenge of the year, so that's really good. We have some books that I really enjoyed this month, but also books that I absolutely did not like at all. So we have a wide range to talk about in this video. So we are going to get into it, but before we do, I just want to quickly talk about mental health. A few videos back, I did share my thoughts on New Year's goals, beginning of the year stress, and I just want to take a second here to talk about it because as we move into February, some of that stress might just leak over. If we feel that we're not really meeting those goals that we set at the beginning of the year, we had a slower start to the year, that can happen. A lot of the time it happens to most of us, but I'm always a firm believer we can make goals any time of the year, we can start challenges any time of the year. And so if you feel like you had a slower start to January, don't worry, there's always the next month. For me, the best way that I kind of check in with my mental health and my goals is by doing therapy. And I would like to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. BetterHelp is an online therapy service that really makes starting therapy a lot less intimidating and a lot more accessible because you can actually choose your preferred method of doing therapy, whether that's through video calls, phone calls, or live text messaging. You can pick whatever you're the most comfortable with. And I think this is really, really great. I have used all methods and really like all of them because sometimes I just feel more social on some days and want to talk to someone face to face, where other times I just want to like cuddle up on the couch and like just text someone. It's also really easy to get started with BetterHelp. All you have to do is fill in a questionnaire talking about your needs, your preferences, what you're looking for in a therapist. And in most cases, after you complete this questionnaire, you will be matched with a therapist within 48 hours. You can then go ahead and start scheduling therapy sessions that work the best with your schedule. There are over 30,000 licensed therapists on the BetterHelp network that will give you a wider range of expertise than you might find like in your local physical geographical area. And then also, if you feel like you're just not vibing with your therapist, you can very easily switch to another one at the click of a button. So easy, no questions asked, and free of charge. So join over 4 million people who have decided to use BetterHelp to start living a healthier, happier life. You can click my link in the description box below, or you can visit betterhelp.com/JamieFalk, that is better H-E-L-P, and my link will get you 10% off your first month of therapy. Okay, so I started this month reading Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. I actually started this book in 2023 but finished it in 2024. This is a YA fantasy, second book in the Six of Crows duology, which we know is so popular. We are set in the Grishaverse, which is this universe that's connected to the Shadow and Bone series, also by the same author, which I have not read. We are set in this bustling city of Ketterdam, where we follow a group of like thieves, gang members, kind of misfits, and we follow them as they go through a series of difficult heists. Essentially, in this world, some people have magic, some people don't. The people who have magic are kind of like imprisoned for it or like used. Kind of the main issue that's going on in both these books is that there's this new drug that's been introduced that when used on like a regular non-magical person, it just kind of gets the person like high or something. But when used on a magic person, a Grisha, this drug amplifies their powers to a really like dangerous, not okay extent, and also just gets them super addicted and dependent on the drug. So the drug is bad and we want to get rid of it, essentially. I really did enjoy the Six of Crows, so I was excited to continue on this duology. I think it kind of gave like everything that you would want in the conclusion of a duology. We got a lot of excitement, we continued the characters that we already knew and loved. Like we weren't really introduced to too many new people, which I think is a good thing. And overall, I did enjoy this book. I really liked how it started. I think the middle of the book kind of dragged out a bit for me. It was a bit long. In this book, we had like, I think it was 6 different character POVs that we were switching around. We never really got the full picture of what we were trying to accomplish at the end. We kind of got little pieces of what everyone knew because like most people didn't know everything that was going on. And I think that can be done very well, where like you're kind of kept in the dark as a reader, and then at the end you just see how all these little pieces come and click together. So usually I like that, but I think it's just dragged out a bit for me in this book. Overall, I did really enjoy this duology. It wasn't one of my favorites, but I did like it a lot. There was just something about following all these characters. I think we're introduced to them kind of all at once, and to me they all seemed like side characters that fit into this big puzzle. I didn't really see any of them as the main character, and I think that was maybe my biggest issue with being able to emotionally connect with this book. Like, I enjoyed the journey, I enjoyed the adventure, but in terms of like feeling emotional towards any of the characters, I didn't really get that. And that's why this book was a 4.3 for me and not a 5. So that's what we started reading. And then next I went on to read Darling Girls by Sally Hepworth. This is an adult thriller that I actually received the ARC to, so I'm always so very grateful. We follow 3 girls who grew up in a foster home, in the same foster home together, and they were raised by their foster mother named Miss Fairchild, who, let's just say, was not the greatest person. Their home was very unstable, very tumultuous, very traumatizing, but these 3 foster sisters, I guess, kind of like really trauma bonded over their upbringing and stayed really close in touch throughout their adult years, even after they left the foster home. They've all kind of just gone on with their lives, gotten jobs, etc. when one day they hear that there were bones found like on the lot that their old foster home used to be in. And so we deep dive into this investigation to find out whose bones they were, to find out who put them there and what happened. And we have this like multi-POV switching back and forth between the past and the present as we go on this journey. This book was a really fast-paced, exciting adventure. Definitely one of those thrillers where you feel fully immersed and like in it. The villain character, Miss Fairchild, was just like, the way she was written, she was so frightening to me. There were also some funny moments, which I appreciated. I feel like when you can write a scary or a serious book, but just like throw in a couple of palate cleanser funny moments, I always appreciate that. But my biggest like qualm about this book is that I just found the ending very predictable. And I feel like the previous, I don't know, couple of thrillers I've read, I've just felt the ending was so predictable that it took away from the overall experience of the thriller. So yeah, that was just my biggest qualm about Darling Girls. But overall, like throughout the entire story, I liked the mood, I liked the vibe. I thought it was really interesting. Okay, I then filmed my finishing series video, so I'm gonna talk about these ones really, really quickly. But I read The Burning God by R. F. Kuang, which is the 3rd book in the Poppy War trilogy. This is an adult fantasy. We follow our main character, Rin, who comes from like a more southern province of Nikara, and she really just wants to get out. So in the Poppy War in the 1st book, she kind of finds her way out of her hometown to go to this really prestigious military school where she can be trained to become like a soldier, a general. And then while she's there, she discovers something called shamanism, which is kind of an unknown thing, but it's essentially like very spiritual magic. I'm not going to say any more because I don't want to like spoil the 1st book or anything, but I will just say I had a huge breakdown in the best way. Like, this book just emotionally and mentally impacted me so much. The entire journey was just so good, and R. F. Kuang is definitely one of my favorite authors now. Anything she writes at this point, I will read. So that was The Burning God. And as I mentioned, I do have an entire reading vlog documenting my experience while reading this book, so check that out if you want to hear more. Also, in this same video, I read The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black, which was the conclusion in the Cruel Prince trilogy. Definitely a lot more lighthearted, more YA, more whimsy and fairy. I feel like I've talked about The Cruel Prince enough on this channel that I'm not going to go into a full summary about it, but it's just like very fairy tale vibes of these like teenage fairy and human characters who are living in this whimsy world. We have a very strong female character. It's like a fae fantasy. It's high stakes but also cozy at the same time. In the Cruel Prince trilogy, I really liked the 1st book. Wasn't a big fan of the 2nd book, but then the 3rd book came back with all the things that I liked in the 1st book, so it was a really great conclusion to the trilogy. Definitely felt like a true fairy tale to me. And then the 3rd book I read in this same video was A Conjuring of Light by V.E. Schwab, the 3rd and final book in the Shades of Magic trilogy. I'm also not going to go into the full summary of this book because, again, I have talked about it a lot on my channel, but we're basically set in this universe where we have parallel universes. Each universe has a different like magic level and humanity level. We kind of flip through all of these worlds, and the story is a lot more complicated than that, but this entire trilogy I also loved. It's very like dark, grimy. The villains are written really well in this trilogy. The magic system is really in-depth and the world building is amazing. And this entire trilogy has become also another one of my all-time favorites. I will say the 3rd book was a little longer than it had to be, but I did overall enjoy it all. I then went to read The Coven by Harper L. Woods. This was another arc that I had, but this was the 1st book of the year that I didn't really enjoy. I probably could have DNF'd this book, but I'm so stubborn that I just always want to finish every book I start. This is a paranormal dark romance, and I think that's where I went wrong because I have never read a dark romance in my life. I've definitely read romances with smut, but not like a dark romance. And after reading this book, I don't know if this was just a poorly written dark romance or if I just don't like dark romance, but this story follows a witch named Willow who is like secretly the last of her bloodline. She's like very rare, like the witches all want to find her and get her under their wing so they can like control her. And then we have our main male character named Gray or Grayson, who is a vessel, which is this type of creature that's like a crossbreed between a demon and a vampire. Basically, they just feed off of witches' blood. We have this like weird alliance between vessels and witches, and we have this witch school that Willow has been summoned to go to. I overall thought this world could have been interesting. I think we had a really good base of where the story could go. What I didn't like about this book though was the romance, which is what this book was very heavily centered towards. We didn't have too much plot. It was definitely more of a romance than a fantasy, but I didn't like the romance. And so I didn't like this book because that was the main focus of this book. This book tried to do enemies to lovers, but it didn't. It was very clear at the beginning that these characters were just very lusty after each other, like instantly, and I'm just like not the kind of person to enjoy a plot like that, so I didn't like it. But if you like dark, lusty romances, then maybe this book would be for you. It didn't do it for me. I had been trying to clear out my physical TBR, so next up I read I You Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. This book had been on my physical TBR shelf for over a year, so it was about time I read this book. Very short book, maybe it's more of a novella. It was like 170 pages long. This was a literary fiction, kind of dystopian feel, and we follow a like younger woman who has been imprisoned in this underground bunker for her entire life. She is in there with 39 other women, so our main girl has never seen outside of the bunker, or maybe she has, but at a very young age. She really doesn't remember anything about the outside world, and she's surrounded by these older women who remember what their lives were like before they got caught because they're a bit older. And so most of this book is just our main character being curious, like trying to learn about things about the real world. I actually enjoyed this book, which I didn't expect because the last few lit fics I've read I haven't really liked. After reading the plot summary of this book, I thought like I was expecting it to be dark and scary because our main character just like, she wasn't scared during the entire book. She was just very curious. Like it was more about her mind, like learning about different things. I think this could have been a 5-star read for me easily just because it was so interesting and the concept of it was so different. But the thing that bugged me about this book is that we never actually found out like why these women were in the bunker in the first place, what the reason was, who was guarding them. And so just like me as a plot reader, like primarily a plot reader, that really bugged me, and like my logical brain the entire time was just thinking, who put these women here? Like what planet are we on? And we didn't get any of those questions answered in this book. It was very much just about the inner mind of this one main character. So I thought that part was done very well, but I was missing answers, like literal answers. Changing pace, I then went back to an adult thriller called First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston. This is kind of like a spy secret identity thriller book, which was fun for me to read because the past few thrillers I've read have been surrounded by like a murder mystery, like an unsolved murder case, where in this thriller we followed just like a secret spy. It was different and exciting and I really liked it. So we follow Evie Porter, who has like the perfect life, the perfect house, the perfect boyfriend. She's not actually Evie Porter. She's actually a spy essentially who has been assigned this name, this character, infiltrating into people's lives, getting ready to figure out her purpose of being there from her boss. All is going smoothly when all of a sudden a new girl shows up in town, and this new girl actually has the name and identity of our main girl's spy's real identity. I think I said that really weirdly. She meets someone who's pretending to be herself. Her job is just like blown out of proportion. She's like, what is going on? Like this has never happened to me while on the job before. So she has to figure out who sent this girl, why she's here, what her purpose is, and like try and keep her actual identity safe. I really enjoyed this book. It was so fun. It was kind of predictable at the end. Maybe I'm just getting too good at predicting thrillers. In the end, this book was so highly entertaining. It was a very, very quick read and I really enjoyed it. I then read The Stolen Heir by Holly Black because I wanted to get back into the Cruel Prince world of Elfhame. This is a spin-off from the Cruel Prince series. It's set in the same world and we follow essentially the brother of the main character of the Cruel Prince. We just have another kind of like whimsical story set in fairyland. This one, compared to the Cruel Prince, is definitely more of a quest-focused book where the Cruel Prince had a lot more like court politics, scheming and all that. This one is more of like a journey, an adventure, a quest, a mission. I really had a lot of fun reading this book. I actually specifically enjoyed how in this book our characters were kind of the opposites of what we had in the Cruel Prince. So like our male main character was very opposite of the male main character in the Cruel Prince, and the female main character was also very opposite of what the female main character was in the Cruel Prince. So we have this story of like very opposite characters, but then we also at the same time got a lot of parallels to the Cruel Prince story. So I liked it. This was the first book in a duology and the second one is coming out in March, I believe. But yeah, I like this book and I'm excited to read on. Next up, I read Yellowface, another one by R.F. Kuang, and this was so good. This was voted as the best fiction of 2023 on the Goodreads Choice Awards, and I really wanted to read this book for so long, so I'm really happy I did. This book is so unlike R.F. Kuang's other books. Her other ones are all kind of these epic fantasies, and this one, I don't know, it seemed like it was from a complete different author in terms of the writing style, but still really, really good. It was a lot like quicker pace to read, I think, just because of the language we were using. It was a lot more real world. It was easier to read than her other books, I think. It required less brain power. But this book is about an author who dies. And then there's another author who is like the dead author's supposed friend who comes in and steals an unpublished manuscript from this dead author and publishes it as her own. We deal with issues with racism because our thief author, like our main character, is not Asian and our dead author who wrote the book is Asian, and the book that she steals has a lot of like Asian culture in it. So we deal with like cultural appropriation in this book, but this book was so fun for me to read. And I've heard mixed reviews about this book because some people cannot stand to be in the head of our main character for an entire book because our main character is someone you're supposed to dislike. But I just found it so entertaining and so interesting to be in this like awful person's mind. She was just so petty, she was so jealous, she was so like insecure and unsure of herself that, I don't know, it was really interesting for me. I think R.F. Kuang is so good at writing these morally gray characters, and I overall really enjoyed this book. It did go kind of like off the rails thrillery at the end, which I didn't expect, which I guess was kind of fun in a way, but it was just somewhere that I didn't see this book going and it threw me off a little bit. But overall, this book was really fun to read and I would highly recommend it. I moved on to Weyward by Emilia Hart, which was the historical fiction winner of the 2023 Goodreads Choice Awards. So this book followed 3 storylines, one in like 1619 or something like that, one in 1942, and then one in like modern day, where we follow these girls that are kind of connected. In our modern day storyline, we have a girl who gets given like a cottage from some estranged aunt that she never really knew. She goes to this cottage and she starts finding like weird, maybe witchy secrets in there. In our 1942 timeline, we have a girl that's been like trapped by her own family in her estate. She's not allowed to get an education, she's not allowed to go outside, she's not allowed to go into town, and so she struggles with that. And while she's like kept locked in, she starts finding out secrets about her mother who passed away. In our 1619 storyline, we follow a girl who is on a trial for a murder and people are accusing her of being a witch. So we have, yeah, these 3 storylines that are kind of intertwined. We start seeing connections between the 3 of them. We have this like mysterious witchiness, but not like hocus pocus flying on broomsticks witches, more like spiritual healer witches with a bit of magic. So I really like this book. It gave me the Unmaking of June Farrow vibes, which is a book that I really enjoyed reading last year. It gave mystery, it gave historical, it gave Little English Village. So I really enjoyed it. This is definitely a vibes book for the vibes readers out there. And this is actually Emilia Hart's debut novel, which I always find when I enjoy books and I find that it's actually the first book that the author wrote, I just get like doubly impressed. I will say, if you are like scared, like terrified of bugs, maybe stay away from this one because there's a lot of mention of bugs like moths, mosquitoes, wings. There's bugs everywhere. But I really like this book. I then read Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo, another one by Leigh Bardugo. This is the first in a adult fantasy duology where we follow a girl who, in a very unlikely manner, gets into Yale University. She gets recruited by the dean. She doesn't really know why, because her entire life she's been bad at school, she dropped out, she got involved with like drug dealing, but she gets offered this opportunity to go to Yale. So she's like, yeah, let's go. But while she's there, she's forced by the dean to get involved in the secret societies of Yale. And she starts seeing that things are a lot darker and more sinister than they appear. I really liked this book. I think the whole secret society thing is so interesting, and the fact that this book was like kind of set in realism, like Yale is real, the secret societies mentioned in this book are real. Obviously we have a lot of fiction on top of that and like magic and stuff, but this book was just everything that I would want in a book like this. It had dark academia, it had murder mystery, magic and secret societies, and this is another book that I really enjoyed the vibe of it. It was very dark and mysterious. I found the beginning of this book a bit overwhelming because I'm not someone who really knows too much about the secret societies of Yale. Like, I've heard of the bigger ones like Skull and Bones and stuff, but like even Skull and Bones, I don't know that much about Skull and Bones. So while we were like getting introduced to all the different secret societies, I was kind of like there was so much information I was needing to cram into my head because I just had no prior knowledge. But once I got kind of things like wrapped around in my head, this book was really fun. And then the last book I read this month was House of Flame and Shadow, the third Crescent City book, and I'm not gonna talk very much about this book because I have an entire reading vlog up on my channel fully dedicated to reading this. So if you're interested in my thoughts, go watch that video. But this was one of my most highly anticipated books of the year, and yeah, I was really excited about this one, so go watch that video. It's really fun. But that is it. Those are the 13 books I read in January. Definitely such a good start to the year. There was only really one book that I genuinely disliked this month, which is so good. I'm excited to get into my February books. I'm definitely gonna have like a romance reading week for like Valentine's Day vibes, and then I have some other exciting like themed weeks I want to do as well for reading. I hope you enjoyed this wrap-up video. I thought it was gonna be quick, but I always just like talk more than I expect to or want to, so it ended up being kind of a long one. If you did like this video, please leave me a like and a comment. If you don't know what to comment down below, let me know what your favorite book that you read in January was. If you like me, subscribe, do that bell thing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!